are so very excited to be included in this conference. I must say that as a practitioner, when I was in district, this was the conference I waited for. It really is geared for our Long Island educators, and we hope today that our presentation will support your work with students on Long Island. So this presentation is based on two of our works. One is from Equity Insights to Action, as well as our co-planning book.
Hi, I'm Audrey Cohan. I'm Senior Dean for Research and Scholarship. I know many of you out there. We are all at Molloy College, and we're really thrilled to be here today. Andrea Honigsfeld, unfortunately, could not be here, but of course, she's part of this presentation.
Good morning. I'm Carrie McDermott Goldman, and I am an associate professor at Molloy College and also the coordinator of bilingual and TESOL graduate and postgraduate programs at the college. And I'm very excited to be here. As Maria stated earlier, this is definitely the go-to conference each year. And I'm so happy to see all of you.
And I'm Maria Dove. I'm professor in the School of Education at Molloy College. And I'm a former ESL teacher when we were called ESL teachers in Valley Stream District 30.
So this is just a picture of where we are today. Of course, it's snowing where we are right now, but we would like to remind you that we are the best kept secret on Long Island, and you can log on to our website anytime and see some of the wonderful programs that we have here. We also have a doctoral program for those of you who might be interested. And here we are, right in the little happy face in New York. Many of you have taken our courses here, and you've also been in our ITI Institute. So we're happy to invite you back today to think more about strategies for equity, which is the focus of our presentation. These are the essential questions that we're going to talk about today. The whys. What drives you to pursue equity for ELs or multilingual learners in your daily work? We'd like you to think and reflect for a minute to yourself. What is your why? What are some impactful hows that you might have? If you recall, Simon Sinek, maybe some of you who read his book, Leaders Eat Last, he asks us to think about the question why. My personal why is I was originally a special ed teacher, and then I earned TESOL certification. And my personal why was figuring out how to distinguish between learning disabilities and language difficulties. So in the chat, maybe some of you want to just put your why. Why are you here today? Why are you passionate about the daily work that you do? And we'd like to just see one or two answers in the chat. Please share your why with us. Oh, I see some alumni writing in. Thank you. So yes, some of you were Ls or still are Ls. You want to make a difference. Thank you for saying that Molloy is like a second home. We feel the same way. And Rachel said, I'm here because I think everyone's voice is important and needs to be heard. Right. And I think we couldn't say it better ourselves. Jennifer says, I want my students to be successful. And I think we all agree with that. Justina, always looking for more ways to support her students. So thank you. Thank you for sharing some of your whys. Well, Kelly, we're going to quote you right here. The most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. So I think most of us agree with that. And one of the lenses that we'll look at today while we talk about equity is the work that we can do collaboratively. Dina says effective communication is key in any and all languages. Thank you for sharing that.
So we want to caution about the dangers of deficit thinking, and we think the pandemic in and of itself brought about this danger, thinking about what students have lost, their learning loss, or pandemic slide, or COVID slide, I think it's called. but we want to think about how can we work collaboratively in beyond the planning for lessons and looking at content and language. We need to look at the broader picture for our multilingual learners. So we want to avoid tracking our multilingual learners into long-term remediation. And we also want to make sure that we're aware that this type of deficit thinking may significantly impact multilingual learners' self-concept and social emotional well-being.
Some of the things that we need to consider is prior to the pandemic, there were a lot of practices that were not necessarily done well, but there were some things that we did do prior to and throughout that really showed the beauty of education, and it showed the beauty of collaboration and working with our students. We saw them shine in ways that we didn't even know they were capable of. You know, you think about the technology aspect, some of our kids really shine through how they developed relationships, how they really built on their knowledge between one another. Those are some of the real silver linings that came through. Family time, really just finding that space where we were able to be together and really work together as a team to help one another. And these are things that we presented as examples for our kids, and our students really saw that. And so these are just some of the silver linings that we really, learned throughout our time.
Carrie, could we pause for a minute and see what other people's silver linings were? I know for
Absolutely.
myself that I learned technology that I had never been introduced to before. So we'd like to know what your silver linings were from teaching through the pandemic.
More personal connections with parents and caregivers, absolutely. Feeling a greater connection to families and to students. The home life, I think that was really essential, what we learned about our kids' home lives, absolutely. And the technology, everybody's agreeing with that. I saw briefly someone had also mentioned seeing the more human side of people, and I think that's so important. Something that was mentioned earlier today is we really sometimes, live behind a screen, and really being able to see who we are and who our students are is so important to our work. So that humanness is a big piece of that. Technology, home life, yes.
Many people wrote about seeing their students and the home life. And I think my silver lining was that we started to really understand the communities better because we took a step into those communities.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to shift us over to one of the reasons that we kind of came together to really write this as a book. And Andrea came up with this beautiful quote that she found from Indian novelist Arundhati Roy. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. And I think that the four of us coming together to really write this book is one of the ways that we really wanted to move forward to fight for it. And listening to all of the conversations from this morning, I think we all are here to fight for it. And so we're hoping that you'll join us as we move through some of the different components of the book. We want to hear from you throughout this presentation in the chat box and hear your ideas and how you feel that you're fighting for it. And if you'd like to share that now, we'd love to hear it. as we move forward.
So now we're entering the portal, but we're entering the portal not just alone, we're entering it with our fellow teachers. And we've experienced things during the pandemic, particularly those things that weren't working for our multilingual learners. So what would you like to leave behind as we together go through the portal and think about what type of work needs to be done collaboratively for the sake of our multilingual learners? Please tell us in the chat box. What are you leaving behind? What are those practices that weren't working before and now you're definitely going to work toward something else?
Yeah, Maria, I think it's so interesting to think right here, where will the portal take us, right? As we wrote this book, we had a lot of conversations around that. And we actually used an analogy of GPS. We said, as we return to the classroom in person, as we are now, and digitalization and technology have improved and changed, and we've become more comfortable with it, how does it shrink the world? And what does this mean? So thinking about what we want to shed, what we want to leave behind, that's what we're looking to find out. What are you thinking?
Oh, thank you, Tracy's thinking, leaving behind the deficit-based thinking and moving towards the idea that multilingualism is an asset. Thank you. Maria says she's not staying silent when colleagues approach our multilingual learners with deficit thinking. Thank you so much. We need to be the advocates for our multilingual learners. We need to speak up. We need to be their voice sometimes when they don't have one.
Mm-hmm. I love all the agreement here as well.
Yeah, I think we have to move away from that learning loss idea and think more about acceleration.
Yes.
Okay.
And as we move forward, we've considered the things that we're leaving behind. I'm curious to hear what you think you're taking with you. What are some of those things that we feel like we do want to take with us? It might be how you connect with your students. I know that was a theme that was running through a few slides ago, that people felt that they had a greater connection with parents and families and their students. So how are we harnessing those connections? How do we bring that through the portal? How do we make that stronger on the other side? What does that really mean for the curriculum? What are those pieces that we're bringing through? I see teaching students how to learn. Thank you, Paul, for sharing that. Cultivating strong relationships. Thank you, Jennifer. Incorporating more social emotional learning into instruction from Maureen. Absolutely. These are all things that we absolutely want to bring through the portal as we move forward. So as we created this book, we looked at 4 different strategies, and we'd like to share them here with you. And if you could, in the chat, you could just jot down the number that you associate most with the 4 equity strategies. The first one is to amplify the talents, spirits, and personal powers of our multilingual learners. Recalibrate the curriculum to accelerate learning for multilingual learners. Teach and assess to build strong autonomy, agency, and resilience. And harness the power of connections and relationships. Thank you for sharing, Erin. Number 4, the relationships. I'm seeing themes here, 1s and 4s and 2s. So there are a lot of ways that we can really consider how we can move forward. And so these were our 4 focus areas.
We'd like to also introduce you to Clarabelle Gonzalez, who made those wonderful sketch notes that you saw. In case you don't know her, she's an EL district coordinator and a coach. And she did the wonderful drawings for each of the chapters for us. So let's go back. Let's start with the why. Many of you shared your why. I think from a global point of view, and also from the macro point of view and the micro point of view, if we don't really have discussions with ourselves and our colleagues right now, we are not going to move forward This is a wonderful time where we can really recalibrate, as Maria said before, and as Carrie said before. So as we talk about these 4 areas, we actually could have started with harnessing the power of relationship and connections. So let's keep thinking about our why as we go through this presentation.
So we're going to start with our first strategy and think about how we can collaboratively amplify the talent, spirit, and personal power of our multilingual learners. Interestingly enough, our rationale behind this is to make sure that we affirm each and every multilingual learner in order to recognize that they have unique talents, strengths, and assets. And it matters so much because our multilingual learners need to feel as if they belong. They need to feel valued, that their lives have meaning, that they are seen and heard by their teachers and appreciated for what they bring to our classes. So think about these important points that we can provide when we collaborate with our fellow teachers. So how do we go about talking about and listening to our students so that they are really heard? So what strategies can we develop to do that? How do we really get to know each and every student and understand who they are, their full humanity? What strategies are we collaboratively thinking of in order to provide this for our students, as well as invite multiple modalities of communication and expression from our multilingual learners?
So well
One way,
stated.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So well stated, Maria. I think these are all pathways to equity, and that's why we're focusing here. So what does it look like? What does it look like in the real world? And if you look at the first picture, it's from WIDA, and you can see that this is a student profile. It's important for us to really think about what each student brings from an asset point of view, a strength-based point of view. And in this one, we see basic information about the student, which we all need to know, the focus on what the student can do rather than what they can't do, guardian or family information, which helps build a context for us around the student, maybe some of their struggles. We know that many of our students didn't have proper access to Wi-Fi during the pandemic. Have we helped them? What do they need? Do they have siblings at home? Do they live with a grandparent? Are the parents working? Were they essential workers? So many things came up, and it's helpful to look at the individual child as well as the class as a whole. And in the right-hand side of the book, we can see a different kind of profile of the student. She's a new student, so I really like that. And then we have some important information again, what country the student comes from, what their first language is, or sometimes their first and second language, again, strengths and hobbies. In the second one, you'll see that the student filled out some of the pieces. And Maria, I'll pass it back to you because a lot of this is from your co-planning book.
Well, the co-planning book represents this type of work. A particular teaching team decided to glean from WIDA these student profiles in order to provide more information about the students, as well as, again, making further connections about who the students are. They're just not numbers on their page. They just don't happen to be their WIDA scores because these teachers were from WIDA states. But they go beyond that to talk about who they are and what they love and what they do beyond their numbers. So the next equity strategy we'd like you to consider to think about working collaboratively for is recalibrating the curriculum to accelerate learning for multilingual learners. So moving away from that deficit thinking and thinking about how we can best provide instruction for our multilingual learners. And the idea here is to examine the curricula to include multilingual learners' experiences, worldviews, and cultural perspectives. Think about, the initiative from New York State for culturally responsive, sustaining education. This is what this strategy is all about. And it's important for multilingual learners to see themselves in the curriculum. They have to have access to culturally, historically, and linguistically responsive, sustaining, integrated curricula that accelerate their academic and linguistic development and not water down what they're teaching, even when they're entering and emerging students. So what does this look like? What can teachers do as far as their collaborative actions? They can examine the curriculum, recalibrate it so that it is relevant to the students' lived experiences, so that it is rigorous and it is relational. We also have to make sure that curriculum in every classroom is integrated so that there is content area learning alongside language and literacy development, as well as social emotional learning. So how do we go about doing that? We offer in the co-planning book 4 questions to consider when you are recalibrating the curriculum. Consider what is the nature of curricula for English learners, multilingual learners, and what is the learning process that they undertake. What purposes should the curriculum serve for English learners, as well as who decides what is most important to teach and what is most important for our multilingual learners to learn, as well as how should the learning of our multilingual learners be evaluated. Another idea is to consider how to do a curriculum equity audit. There are lots of tools that you can find to actually examine your curriculum in order to make sure that it is geared for the success of multilingual learners. Carrie,
The
you're
third
muted.
strategy, yes, the third strategy we'd like you to consider is teaching and assessing to build student autonomy, agency, and resilience. And what does that really mean? What's the purpose of that? And we really want to make sure that our multilingual learners have access to enriching experiences in the learning environment that support their independence, and they're assessed equitably in a way that we're really identifying that they're growing in a way that makes sense. When we think about that authentic piece of assessment, that's critical to what we're doing in the classroom. And we want to make sure that all students, especially our English learners, our multilingual learners, have access to an integrated approach to instruction. That language is really, truly embedded in everything that we're doing. Every child that we have is a language learner. And we have to really think about what that means and how we can create that focus in what we're doing in our classrooms. We want to make sure that students are building both content and literacy, as well as growing through a social emotional lens as well. They've been through so much in such a short amount of time, and we want to make sure that they're open for learning and that it's accessible to them. And I think also in thinking about that, the last couple of years have also created a new lens for us to really look through. And we have to really identify how we're truly supporting our students and making sure that they're developing a resilience and a strength in what they're learning. How do we do this? Through our deliberate daily actions. We really need to think about how we're using instructional strategies throughout our classes and throughout our school buildings. What does that really mean? How are we giving our students access, authentic access to the curriculum and what they do on a daily basis in our rooms. And we also want to create equitable approaches to assessment, as I mentioned. So we have to really kind of recalibrate that, really think about what that means for our students, what information we're trying to gain about their growth. And we want to make sure that everything is really truly coming full circle, that what our intentions are, we're following up through our assessment, and we're really gauging how much students are walking away with.
So one strategy in particular that we like to focus on is to consider this word multi. The idea that there are so many dimensions for supporting our English learners. So how do we go about doing that? Here are just some ideas: that our teaching must be multilingual, multisensory, multimodal. It must have multiple entry points for our multilingual learners, as well as the use of multiple grouping strategies. It has to most certainly be multicultural and also represent many voices, so multivocal. Are there any other multis that we might be missing? What do you consider when you are developing instruction for your English learners? What multis are missing here? Can you share with us in the chat box your multis?
So good, we
Multiple
see some.
intelligences. Thank you.
All of them.
All of them. Thank you, Angela. Yes, it does. Multi-talented. Thank you, Erin. Multi-opportunities. Yes. Multi-friends. Those connections, again, going back to them. Multiple emotional levels. Thank you, Carol. Multifaceted. Yes. Thank you, Maria. Multiple perspectives, multiple stories, multiple personalities, and multiple expectations. Yes, multiple skill levels, multi-layered, and multiple scaffolds. Absolutely, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
So again, what does it look like? We need to continue to view our students as competent sources of knowledge, and we need to help them with anchor charts, classroom strategies, so that they can move forward and be as successful as possible. Here you just see a few of them. In this anchor chart on the left, you'll see the key words, and of course there's a symbol in nice bright colors so the children can see them. I know many of you have the experience working with multilingual learners. They glance around the room all the time looking for that help, that extra support that they know they can find. Compare real numbers. Here's a really good one. It's a one-pager where all the information that the student needs to know is on that one page. And the same thing with the poster on the right, the Earth's moon, a visual representation of what they need in order to be successful. We need to continue to develop class cultures where students support each other, where diverse viewpoints are valued, and where immigrant children or children of immigrants know that there is support wherever they look around the room.
I just want to chime into that also, Audrey, and just say that at all different levels, these type of things that are displayed around a classroom are so vital to our students' success. And the students that need them will use them. The students that don't need them won't even look. But the support needs to be there so that students understand the expectation.
Yeah, as Stephanie said a minute ago in the chat, these are examples of multiple scaffolds.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our fourth strategy, and that is harnessing the power of connections and relationships. And I truly feel like that's at the crux of everything that we really talked about today, and really understanding how we can create relationships and work with our students in ways that really help them grow through authentic opportunities, through just getting to know our kids and really understanding who they are and where they come from, taking time to really hear their stories, allowing their voices to be heard. I think that many of our students oftentimes don't feel seen and don't feel heard. And we want to really provide the opportunities for them to feel both of those things throughout our classroom, throughout the school day, in a variety of environments. And the truth is we want to first and foremost help them feel safe, because many of our students are, in some cases, coming back to school. In some cases, are still out. So we want to make sure that when students are back in our environments, that they're feeling good about what they're doing and they feel safe and confident. And those relationships that we develop with them really help build a foundation for them to grow from. And those are some of the things that we need to really think about to support how they thrive, not only in our classroom, but well beyond that. And so I just want to point out for one moment, I know Audrey had mentioned Clarabelle earlier. This is one of her images. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Clarabelle's work is that she used to do something similar to this when she was a student. And she used to draw pictures and images that went along with what she was learning. And this is a skill that she actually teaches to her students. And I think it really brings together all the things throughout our book. Each of our chapters has one of these images, and it really truly pulls everything together throughout. And you can see all the different things about welcoming, safe, affirming environment, partnerships, what that really looks like, family like schools, schools like family, the connections, and recognizing humanity. And that's something that came up earlier in our discussion in the chat box, that, we really need to think about that humanizing piece. We're human, our kids are human, and there's a lot to be learned from that space. And so, how we build strong communities, a strong sense of community and belonging in our rooms and beyond those walls is critical. Supporting, all aspects of the students, what they're going through at home, their social emotional pieces. So much goes into really developing a child and really helping them being seen and heard. Collaborating with stakeholders at all different levels, which I think is amazing what we've done today, hearing from some of the different stakeholders in our area, I think was really an important piece to that. And then also harnessing the power of the people that we have within our buildings, because it takes a community to really work with our kids. And we have to think about how social workers and guidance counselors, teaching aides, and other people within our buildings really bring something to the table. Our administrators, what are we all bringing, and how can we really truly together support our students? Again, going back to that really true collaborative piece.
So this is just one example of what it might look like. So how do we go about building that strong sense of classroom community? And Justin Garcia, who's a teacher of young multilingual learners, developed this fishbowl activity for his young students. And interestingly enough, the group who were going to speak prepared what they were going to say. And he wanted the main focus of this particular activity was to get students to talk conversationally, to actually use the language orally. And while the other students listened and jotted down some ideas and notes and did some sketching. And what occurred was, to his amazement, that students actually started to converse with one another about their ideas, and that the other students were able to see that, and so they became great models. It was one way to begin the work of building a class community, by having students have more opportunities to share their ideas with one another's.
So let's be a little reflective as we move towards, or we're in 2022, the beginning of the year. How are we going to amplify the talents, spirits, and personal powers of our L's What equity strategies will you pursue? How will we continue to recalibrate the curriculum and accelerate learning for multilingual learners? And I talked a little bit about acceleration before. Acceleration means that we need to try to not remediate, but rather take them as fast as we can to the grade and age expectations of where they need to be. And perhaps I suggest that they might even surpass those expectations. So accelerating learning, working on that trajectory should be something that we all think about. What shortcuts can we use, for example, to get our students to be where we would like them to be? We need to continue to teach and assess to build student autonomy, agency, and resilience. This component of the book really resonates with me because I think the pandemic has started us on that trajectory. Students have already shown more autonomy, independence, agency, and of course, resilience than ever before, and we need to not lose that. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we have a new insight into communities and families. How do we continue to harness the power of connections and relationships? So what I would like you to do right now is, I know you answered earlier which one resonated with you. After our presentation, which one do you think is going to be first and foremost as you continue in 2022? Just please put the number in for us. Okay, so we see a good mix again.
Yeah.
I see a lot of 2s and 4s coming up again. Recalibrating the curriculum, yes. What do the students need to know? A couple of 1s coming in. How do we amplify those talents? It's all about the success of our multilingual learners. And some of you, I'm sure, have classrooms where there are 50 or 75% of your students are multilingual learners. So you're really talking about almost entire classrooms of good strategies, equity-based strategies to support your students. Carrie, do you have anything you'd like to add there?
I just think it's great to see all the numbers. I just chimed into the chat where I'm so excited to see all the participation because, you know, it's nice to see that, you know, we're in 2022 and we're moving forward and what that means for everybody. And I love to see all the different numbers and the consideration in these areas. And although some of the numbers are the same, I think that we really need to evolve into what that's going to be for 22 and well beyond that.
Yes, Nancy said it's really all of them, and we have to agree.
Yes.
So here's a quick strategy, a way to frame what you're thinking. We call it the AAA, and you'll find this in our book as well. The first A stands for agency. We've got to view multilingual learners, as I said a minute ago, as capable students who want to meet and exceed the high expectations we hold for them. And it's not only, of course, the expectations that we have for them, but the expectations that they have for themselves. What are their assets? We need to recognize that they're already competent in their language and their culture and can use their funds of knowledge and identity to acquire English. I do catch that typo. It should be funds, but of course, that's probably a Freudian one, fun. School should be fun. And then lastly, intentionally focus on language acquisition, the levels of English. We haven't spoken much about proficiency levels, but we know that that is very important to really know what your students' proficiency levels are. And if you're in any kind of inclusion class or team teaching, make sure that the mainstream or full-time regular general ed teacher knows those proficiency levels as well. We scaffold up, not down. We do not remediate, but we accelerate. And we address academic and disciplinary literacy. So again, our focus is always about literacy and language. And I really like the slide a lot, the idea of AAA. I do think of my car. It reminds me of a way, in short, agency, assets, and ways to accelerate. We don't want to talk about moving too fast, but it's important that we move quickly. We don't want to lose any opportunities to help our students acquire the work that they need to do to be successful.
So to kind of wrap us up, we're definitely open to some questions.